Welcome back. In this video, we're going to take a look at scraping fighter information from their Wikipedia page, meaning this section. The reason we're doing this is, first of all, practice. The second of all, the strategy pattern that I've showed you here, where you're basically substituting the way you scrape the same information. That's not a very realistic example. Generally, you have a script or a function that goes after specific information. And then when you try to kick off a collection, you're more interested in what data you want to collect. Therefore, we will delete the BS opponents and BS select opponents files. We'll go to BS XPath. By the way, you don't have to delete those. You can keep them if you want. This is where we will implement an additional method of getting individual fighter information. And in main.py, I'm going to get rid of these comments, which are importing the stuff from the files that we have just deleted. I do urge you, please try to do this implementation on your own. Pause the video here, and then if you get stuck, if you get confused, come back and watch the way I do it. Nevertheless, I am going to go ahead. I'll define a function. I'll call it get fighter info. In here, I will also pass HTML. I'll do the same loading that I have done here using this selector. And now I need the actual logic for extracting that information. Let's right click on here, inspect, and this is going to be, surprise, surprise, another table. We already know how to zoom in on tables, so let's go ahead and do this again. I'm gonna Ctrl F and actually copy the classes before I Ctrl F, because when I Ctrl F it doesn't let me copy the classes, so do it before I start searching. We'll search for a table, which is going to have a class with the following classes that I copied. I'm going to make sure to wrap them before I actually just exit the search. So research there we have it. There's the table. Navigate to the T body, the individual T body. I'm selecting the single T body that exists here. This gives me confidence of going ahead and shooting for all the TRs, all the rows that are in here. Meaning I am looking at each individual attribute that describes individual fighter. Like the first one will be their name. Looks like I can just see TRTH. So when I'm looking for a name, this is where I can extract it from. Otherwise, these ones, let's take a look, for example, at the nickname. What does this look like? The TH text starts with nickname and then it follows by a TD of the actual nickname. Nationality starts with nationality and then it says Russian. Again, this first is TH, then this is TD. One thing that I can see here is a nickname is present. However, on this nationality section, nickname is not present, meaning I don't want to rely on classes like this. I want a more generic way of extracting this data. The repeating pattern that I see here is that on the left-hand side, we have the key. That means what kind of information do we have about the Khabib, like his age, height, etc. And then the actual value is on the right-hand side. Sometimes it's in weird format, sometimes it's in easy format. Those kind of edge cases we can handle. Otherwise, it is just go over each individual row that we have here. Whatever first TH in the TR that we recognize, like a nickname or born or whatever, we want to just grab that information. If we don't recognize any of the elements in the TR, ignore that TR. And the actual value that we're grabbing is from the TD that is contained in the TR. I'll grab the XPath expression that I have written here. I'll use the selector to execute this XPath expression. This will get me all of the TRs. And then for each TR, for TR and TRs, I want to grab the left, which is also going to be the key. So let's refer to it as the key. That's going to be TR. Again, I will use XPath. I will look for a TD, and then I will grab the text. I'll then call get. I then want the equivalent value, and actually I've messed up here. The key used to be in the TH column, and then TD has contained the actual value. So let's place TH here. The value goes over here, but that's still the TD that's inside the TR. And that's going to give me the text value. Sometimes it's going to be messed up. Sometimes it's not going to be messed up. We'll see how we'll handle those individual use cases. I'll start with easy things like the nickname, the nationality, And the special edge case that I can see in the first row here, we just have the individual th. So I will extract that separately. I'll do the same thing that we've done previously, where I'll just say start from the second thing. We don't care about the first one because the first one will be the name. Let's extract it as the name node, trs 0. This is just going to contain a th and span. So I just want to look for a span and extract the text. On here, I'll call xpath. Anywhere in there, grab the span and grab its text. Call get. And there we have it. The name. Same as before, we can start building up the result. Fighter info. This will be an empty dictionary, and then we'll put a name in here. I'll start with none. Place a comma. The reason you place a comma on the end is when you duplicate, it automatically brings in a comma. If you don't have a comma and you duplicate this row, you start to get errors, and you do the same thing with collections. So place a comma on the end, and if you copy your line this way, you can keep putting them as much as you want. That's the name, so I will use this key, name over here, and by the end of extraction, I should be able to return fighter info. Amongst other things, I'm just gonna grab a couple of additional pieces of information. I will look for nicknames and nationality. Born looks a little bit mental. I would still like to get it, but I will ignore it for now. Let's start with nicknames and nationality. We'll say if key, and that is going to be the individual th text. I can call the starts with method on it, because it's going to be a string, and that's going to be nickname and this optional s. I'm assuming they can either have one or many. Is it always going to be called nicknames? Is it going to be nickname sometimes? This is why I'm looking for starts with nickname, in case that optional s text isn't going to be there sometimes. When I find this, I will select fighter info. I'll say that this is nickname. Place this over here and store the value as well. Otherwise, else if, let me scroll down a little bit, key. Again, I will use starts with, and you see, I kind of exactly remember what the name of the function was. This is how you can test it. If you actually know the type, this is what you're gonna be able to find. Okay, and if you want the IntelliSense on the actual variable that you're working with, you can give it a type hint, something called a type hint, right? You just say colon and string. You're hinting that this key is of type string, and now you should be able to see the same functions appearing when you're trying to navigate to the members of an individual variable. Let's remove this. Here I am looking for starts with nationality. This is going to give me his nationality. Let me just actually put the key over here. Starts with none. Set the nationality here. And for now, I am happy. The rest of the keys that are not going to match this are just going to skip over, and nothing is going to happen. In the end, this will give me the fighter info that I want. I'm going to come back to main.py. I will also import get fighter info. And now I need a way to swap between opponents and fighter info when I run the script. Otherwise, what I will have to do is essentially comment to the code, comment things out, comment back in. The bigger and bigger your application gets, that becomes more and more unfeasible. Anytime you want your application to perform different tasks, you don't want to go in and change the code. You want to make your application so that when you use it, you can provide some kind of arguments, some kind of parameters to your application so that it does different things. And this is what we're going to take a look at in a second. For now, whatever we're scraping, response.text, we will refer to it as the results. We'll print the results. We're going to dump these results. We're dumping them to JSON, and we will also save these results over here. We'll open up the terminal, run our application. Looks like I have messed up getting the text. Let me drop this down, and I'll look slightly higher for how we get the text, and we're actually using just a slash, not a colon. I must have seen it being used this somewhere somehow, so I just messed up the syntax. These things will happen. Fix it, rerun the application. Here I get an error, method object is not subscribable. I can see the line on which this is happening. This is when I'm extracting the key. And that's because I'm using square braces instead of parentheses. Square braces is me trying to peek into the object, trying to look for some kind of contents. XPath is a function which I want to execute, and you execute that by using parentheses. So let's fix that as well. Looks like I have made the same mistake here and here. Look for the rest of it, and actually it looks fine. Rerun the application again. Another exception where none-type object has no attribute starts with. That means sometimes this key doesn't have a text, but we're still attempting to check it. Really easy thing that we can do here is we can say if key is none or value is none. Let's continue. We'll just skip over this. This is going to be our guard. Rerun the application, and there we have it. There is our information. Let's take a look at the JSON file. Now that we are extracting some additional information, let's make the process of switching what we want to go for a little bit easier, and then we're going to come back to building up this collector to handle some additional edge cases in terms of like maybe extracting the image URL and stuff like that. I'll drop down the terminal, I'll come back to main.py. The way that you pass arguments into your script that you're running is you have to import sys, and then from sys you're capable of reaching something called arguments. sys.argv. Let's start with printing this. If we just run our application, this is going to print the path of our file. If we run our application and besides it, I will type in something like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, that is going to be an additional argument there. If I place a comma and type in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 again, and let's make this a little bit bigger, we're going to see that the arguments are space delimited. If we want to pass some kind of key value, we would have to do something along the lines of this. Key equals value. That's the way that it's going to be passed. When we read in a value like this, we will have to split it in the middle by the equals. On the left hand side, we're going to have the key. On the right hand side, we're going to have the value. Only then we are capable of using it like that. If you want key value arguments, you have to specify it as an individual string and then process it. Otherwise, just pass the value that you want, and that should be available through the sys.argv. We'll drop down the terminal. We'll use sys.argv to first validate that the length is bigger than 1. That means that we're passing an argument, and if it is 1, that means we're missing arguments, and we can actually raise an exception here and say something like missing argument, and then put some kind of description here to make your application look a little bit better. I will rerun it so we can see this exception happening. There we have it. I'll close down the terminal again, and if we actually have arguments, sys.argv, I will get this argument, and this argument is going to be the target. What are we going after? What kind of information? If target is going to be equal to ops, which is going to be opponents, I will set my handler to none to begin with, and otherwise if we do supply ops, let's set the handler to get opponents. If target equals info, and this can be fighter info and stuff like that, but here I'm going to set the handler to get fighter info. Please, please, please notice that we're not putting parentheses here. That means the function is not being executed. We take the function like a thing as a process that can happen, and we don't run it. We just take it and we put it inside the handler variable. And now that this process is stored inside a variable, we can take this variable and we can execute that variable as if we're performing it on the original function. We'll take this handler, we'll invoke it over here, and we'll delete this line of code as we no longer need it. Let's open up the terminal. We'll run our script. We'll run ops first. We're gonna get all the opponent information, and then if we specify info, we're gonna get the fighter information. But the file's not updated, so let me close it, don't save it, and open it again, and then we're gonna see the changes in here. We're constantly overwriting the same file, Let's provide another argument where we can say, here is the name of the file where you output it. I'm going to put this in position 2. This will be output. We'll take output and we will use it as part of the name where we're outputting the result. The print is getting a little bit annoying for me in the terminal. We see it every time. We know it works. We don't need to see it. I'll bring the terminal back up. Main info, and this is going to be info again for the first name of the argument. Here we're going to see info. If I want to append Khabib, I can do that. There's my info of Khabib. If I then want to get the opponents, ops and ops, we're saving this information to a different file every single time. Hopefully you have got the idea to try to substitute the URL as well. I will move the output file to the third parameter, and second parameter is going to be the URL that we're trying to scrape. I'll place it over here and remove the URL that we're scraping here. Coming back to the command line, let's get the opponents. For Khabib, I will remove the quotes, otherwise they're going to be part of the arguments. Rerun, looking into ops again, and we are getting the same result. What if we come back, we go down and we look for a different fighter? We'll grab Justin Gaethje. Like, open this up, I don't know why that's open. We will grab his URL, come back to our application, to the terminal, bring this back up. I'm gonna hold down Control and that doesn't work, hold down Alt, that doesn't work. On some operating systems it will delete more than one line, but basically remove the URL, supply a new URL, and describe this as Justin, like that. Let's look at Justin, his opponents, and we're scraping Justin's opponents just like that as well. Let's drop the terminal down. We'll come back to BS XPath opponents, come back to the web page as well, and extract some information that may look a little bit awkward. We'll right click, inspect. Let's first take a look at the image. Looks like this is a single box as well, where this is the date the image was taken, but the image itself, if we open it up, this is what it looks like. We can right click and open image in a new tab. The file over here, we want to perhaps try to go from this link to this link, although they look quite different. So this would require to perhaps follow this link, and then on this link, if we inspect this, we are capable of seeing the full link. So it's going to be 2 additional requests. I'm not going to go and try hard like that. I will just collect this link over here. Notice it's missing the original domain. We are going to have to append it over here. Let's come back to the code. We will start from the second position now, because we know that the first one is going to be the image. Image starts with none. TRS1, that's going to be the image. Coming back here, we're looking at the link, href. Look for a link, grab its href. Pretty sure that's not how you grab it. Yeah, so you want the /@href, get that. We have the image, and when we do get it, we want to concatenate it with the domain. Let's grab the Wikipedia domain from over here, place it into this string. Again, use string interpolation, curly braces over here. We can make this a little bit neater, or basically not making the line too big, and type it out like this, so maybe it's a little bit easier to see. There we have it. Let's rerun. This is going to be info of Justin. We'll grab info, rerun. Looks like that has worked. Let's take a look at info Justin. Looks like that has worked as well, and opening that up, that opens up on my second screen. We'll come back around to, let's do height, because this has quite interesting information in terms of 5 feet 11 inches and then the metric system. Coming back to our application, the BS XPath opponents, and by the way, this is no longer just opponents, this is more like fighter information. Let's specify another else if, and this is going to start with height. The value that we're seeing here, first it's going to be imperial, and then it's going to be metric system. The metric system is contained in parentheses. There is something super smart that we can do here. However, I will leave that for a little bit later. We're just gonna do the silly approach of there is gonna be a string there and we wanna do things with it. I'll copy the value, and before understanding what I want to write over here and how I want to manipulate this value for his height, I'm going to open up the terminal and enter Python. Since I've copied the string, I'm going to assign it to variable a, place the string over here. For a, I can split it by the first parentheses like this, put it in variable b, and now I have these b values. This is going to give me an imp. I'm not going to attempt to spell empirical, but that's going to be the first value. That's imp, and then we're going to have the value on the right, which we want to strip. So strip r, strip right, we can strip the value, and actually I might have seen that function somewhere else, but there we have it. There is his height. If we go for the metric, that is going to be in position 1. So metric, here we can strip the brace on the other side. And there we have it. This is how we reach metric. This is how we reach imperial. Most of the time, you should be able to do these operations in your head, but if you are lost a little bit, this is what you could do. Let's do the same thing with our value. We'll split it by this first parentheses, and this is going to give us 2 parts. I like to call these parts. Again, I will use imperial, which is going to be imp and index 0. There is going to be metric, which is going to be the second part. The second part, I'm going to split, or rather strip the brace on the end. For the first one, I'll have to strip the space on the end. Dropping down the terminal so we get a little bit more space, I'll duplicate this key, call it height, and then in the height key, we will place an object where we will explicitly specify imperial measurement, which is going to be imp, and then metric measurement, which is going to be metric. And there we have it. Let's exit this like that and rerun our application. We'll take a look at info Justin. And there we have it. We pretty much managed to capture all of this information. One thing that may stick out are these characters over here. You may be like, what are these? If you just Google around for \u, you're gonna figure out that these are Unicode characters, and we may have seen a glimpse of them when we were looking at it here, and this is what it looked like here, right? So we double click, everything looks fine. We don't click on it, we see this ampersand NBSP semicolon. That's basically the start and end of the Unicode character. They can be a little bit pesky in data collection. Depends on who is going to be seeing this information and how. If you're just going to re-render it in some user interface, if you're going to put this into Excel, perhaps Excel is going to handle it. Perhaps your UI is going to handle it. If you're just going to pass on this information or display it from the console and these show up, you may want to remove them, you may want to replace them. In terms of how to handle them and maybe getting your head a little bit more around them, because you will be encountering different types of character encodings. We'll cover that in the next video. For now, this will be it. Thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to leave a like, subscribe. If you have any questions or want to say thank you, leave it in the comments section, and make sure that you come support me on Patreon, get the source code. Big thank you to all of my patrons that are already supporting me. Your help is very much appreciated. Thank you for watching the video, and have a good day.